Okay, welcome to the Rob Call Bottom Up Show, sponsored by opednews.com, available audio on iTunes and Progressive Radio Network, and on YouTube, of course, if you're watching it. My guest tonight is Czenk Uygur. He is, you got to read this stuff, he's the co-founder and main host of the Young Turks and has been involved in founding Wolf-Pac and Justice Democrats. You've done amazingly well. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. You've done amazingly well with your network. Brag a little bit about it and tell us a bit about the network. I mean, from what I understand, you're the #1 online news source.
Yeah. So thank you, Rob. I really appreciate it. So let me explain a little bit. So we started a long time ago as a radio show, and then we went online at the end of '05. So we've actually had the longest running stream on the planet. We've had a daily stream live on our website for 12 years now. And so that's part of why we've had the success that we've had, just longevity, being around, and offering an alternative. So we have about 10 million subscribers when you count YouTube and Facebook together for the entirety of the network. For the entirety of the network, we have about 6 billion lifetime views. Our views monthly fluctuate between 200 and 250 million. And the reason we say that we're #1 is because that's what all the rankings say. ComScore, Tubular, Shareably, they come out every month. Some months, to be fair, CNN beats us in 35 and above age groups. We always win 35 and under age groups, and we go back and forth with CNN in the news and politics category, and no one else is really remotely close.
How would you describe what you do to somebody who didn't know about you?
So the main thing that we're known for is being progressive, but that's not exactly right. So we're super proud of that. We're not the old school Democrats. We don't run from that. We run towards it, right?
Yeah.
But more accurately, what we have is an outsider's perspective. So we think that mainstream news is mainly done from an insider's perspective, and they don't have a liberal bias that's comical, and they don't even quite have a conservative bias. They have an establishment bias, because they are part of the establishment. So overall, neutrality supports status quo. Why would MSNBC want to support the status quo, as an example? Well, they're owned by Comcast, a multi-billion-dollar company. They don't want to rock the boat because it's their boat. It's very, very simple. And that goes almost all the way to New York Times. Unfortunately, it does. Now, that doesn't mean that New York Times does it from time to time, do great journalism. They do. And it doesn't mean there aren't great people who work at the New York Times. Unlike the right wing, we don't want to tear down the rest of the media. Their effort is to replace the media with their propaganda. What we want to do is we want to make the media better. And the good news there is that if you succeed, usually Media 101 is to copy you. So our business model is unique. We hope the rest of our competition copies exactly what we do. Most people wouldn't want that if you're winning, but we do.
Well, talk a little bit more about that business model and your approach to the news.
Yeah, so we are told that there's two fundamental errors in the mainstream media. One is confusing neutrality and objectivity. So neutrality is the Dodgers and the Yankees played. Dodgers say they won, and the Yankees say they won. I guess we'll never find out. I'm neutral. I reported what the Dodgers said, and I reported what the Yankees said. And it sounds comical when you talk about it in a sports perspective, but that is literally what CNN does day in, day out. Republicans say this, Democrats say that. Golly gee, I guess we'll never find out. So, no, that's what a stenographer does. That's neutral. Objective is they played the game, here's who won. Now, of course, that's when the mainstream media guys will scream, but in politics, it's not that obvious. No, it is. Oftentimes, it's very, very obvious, and there are facts to support it. So, for example, Iraq had nothing to do with 9/11. That was not disputable. You shouldn't have said Republicans say this and Democrats say that. You should have followed up with, and here is the reality. Yet 70% of Americans thought that Saddam Hussein had personally attacked us on 9/11. That is a massive, gigantic, historic failure of the mainstream media. And they did it because they have the wrong standard, which is neutrality. Objectively, he had nothing to do with it. Objectively, the Republicans broke the record on filibustering under Obama. They did. So it wasn't the Republicans say Obama's obstructionist and Obama says the Republicans are obstructionists. There is actually a legislative record you can go to and say, oh, well, the answer is the Republicans tripled the record of filibusters. It turns out they are wrong. They are the obstructionists. But mainstream media goes, no, oh my God, that would be an opinion. That would be stating facts. That would not be neutral. Do your job. Your job's supposed to be objective. I don't want to ruin objective reporting. I want to fix objective reporting. Now, secondarily, they then say, you're not supposed to care about the news that you cover. You don't want to be part of the news. I reject that standard completely. So Wolf Blitzer's been covering the news for 30 years, and he doesn't give a damn about it? That's why I call them news actors. They're not news anchors. They're news actors. All he does is read a script from a teleprompter on television. Wolf, you've never had an opinion for 30 years straight on any of the news stories? No, you're lying. Of course you have an opinion. You're just hiding it. It is dishonest by definition, whereas we believe in transparency. This is our perspective. We care a lot about the news. That's why we're in it. And if that means from time to time we try to actually change things that are going wrong, well, God bless. And apparently the audience likes that.
Well, same here. That's what I do with op-ed news as well. But you're giving a best of all worlds neutral description of CNN and MSNBC. I mean, you look at what happened during the primary time, and MSNBC and CNN, those anchors were not neutral at all. What is? I mean, it's not news, but how do you characterize what happened there?
So, Rob, it's funny how it works, right? So I've been in the building. I not only did I work at MSNBC for a year as an on-air host, but I have done dozens of appearances on CNN throughout the years. I know a lot of those guys. They genuinely don't think that they're biased. And if you accuse them of that, they get flummoxed and bewildered. They're genuinely shocked by that accusation, okay? But they, of course, you're right, they are. So that's why I try to explain to them, guys, I know you didn't get a memo, although in my case at MSNBC, I literally got told to take it easy on the establishment. So that's a whole other story. But that's because I was obstinate. I demanded to actually represent the audience rather than the establishment, and it was annoying them, and they had to make it overly clear to me. But most of the time, there is no memo, there is no talking to. They simply hire people whose inclination is to believe the establishment, to believe the Pentagon, to believe the government, to believe the parties. And so when they start counting superdelegates, to your point about the primaries, from day one, as if they have already voted, when they don't vote till the end, the groupthink is amazing. The invisible hand of the establishment, the way that it works is amazing. They all think, of course you should count the superdelegates before they vote. And I say to them, but wait a minute, in 2008, didn't hundreds of superdelegates switch, and hence it was irrational and counterfactual to count them before they actually voted? Oh yeah, that's true. Okay, but they have convinced themselves, because they got to sleep at night, that they didn't rig it, that they were not biased. They're just like, well, no, my boss told me superdelegates count. Well, the graphics say the superdelegates count in the beginning, and that's how they had that establishment bias to favor Hillary Clinton. Not because it was a cabal. I don't want to
belabor it too much.
But their assumptions.
So you said something that rung a bell for me, and I call the show Bottom Up because I try to take a look at how things are being done in a bottom-up way, with the belief that the internet has catalyzed our culture and young people's brains so that they see things in a more bottom-up way, and it's produced trillions of dollars in new businesses that are bottom-up businesses. And bottom up, as Bernie Sanders said, and actually Obama and Hillary and John Kasich have all said, is the way you make change happen. So you talked about how you tried to represent the audience instead of the establishment. And that sounds bottom up to me. So I'm going to ask you to think about the ways that you take a bottom up approach, starting with the audience. Talk about that and then other ways.
So a lot of the establishment media is set up to serve someone other than the audience. audience. Why? Just think about it. Logical incentives and disincentives. You're a multi-billion-dollar corporation. You have a lot of different interests. When GE owned MSNBC and NBC, for example, they made a lot more money from war and defense contracting than they did from media. Media was a helpful propaganda arm for what they needed to do to make real money. The mainstream will go, oh, that's conspiracy. No, that's in their quarterly earnings reports that they publish publicly. They don't even hide it that much, right? They say, of course, I make more money doing this than I do that. So these are things that are super obvious and out in the open. So when I went into MSNBC and I was their 6 o'clock host, I said, let's serve the audience. So they don't care about corporate parents. They don't care about advertisers. Oftentimes they're opposed to those. So let's actually try it. And you know what will happen is we'll get ratings. Because if you say, hey, you know what? Here's what the Republican Party is doing wrong, but here's what the Democratic Party is doing wrong. Here's what President Obama didn't tell you the truth on, right? And you know what they would say to me, Rob? They'd say, hey, Czenk, remember who the home team is. I was like, no, wait, the home team is the audience. They're like, no. No, they meant the home team is the Democratic Party in those years for MSNBC.
What was it for them? Why was that the home team for them? I mean, it's obvious that it was, but
for two reasons. One, as a matter of programming, Keith Olbermann was the first to start challenging the conservative monolith on TV. And when he did, I know for a fact that MSNBC executives fought him tooth and nail. They didn't want him to do that. And he did it against their wishes, and then he got unbelievable ratings. And when they did, the executives pretended, yeah, that's what we meant all along. Of course. We told Keith to do that, right? I was in the building. I'm positive. I wasn't there at the time, but I know the guys who were in the room when they made those decisions, okay? So they lied about that. So now what they then did, because they can't help themselves, they're so established when they can't see straight, is they didn't think, okay, Keith's going in a progressive direction. They thought Keith is going in a democratic direction, which is a huge difference.
Absolutely.
But the executives at MSNBC didn't understand that difference at all, so they thought the home team is the Democratic Party. Secondarily, and very conveniently, and hence one of the real reasons they went in this direction, is at the time, who's in power? The Democratic Party. The almost entirety of MSNBC's so-called progressive direction, Obama was in charge. And Obama is the one who gets to decide whether Comcast is a merger, whether Comcast gets to do net neutrality, destroy net neutrality, or not destroy, right? So it helps to cater to that power if you're going to make far more money by destroying net neutrality or by doing that merger with Time Warner or originally with NBC to begin with. So that's why they catered to the Democratic Party and thought it was the home team.
So you cater to the audience.
Yes.
What does that look like? What does that mean in terms of your philosophy of doing news and telling stories and narrating what's happening?
Yeah. So first off, it means that you do not concern yourself with access. The people on TV are obsessed with access, whether it's sports, entertainment, or most importantly in this category, politics. So we would be doing a story, and my producers, out of good intentions, they weren't bad guys, would say, okay, which congressman should we have on? And what I would ask them is, why? Why do you want a congressman on? Congressmen are generally incredibly dull. They do nothing but talking points. The audience is not interested in them. You can't prove to me that they drive up ratings, because they don't. They drive down ratings. So why do you want them on? And the reality was, it's because they just wanted the Democratic Party position to be regurgitated as propaganda on air. But they didn't know that. They're just following the directives that come from up top. So if you're doing audience first, you say, okay, here's the news story. Here's the facts, A, B, and C. Now, here's what's actually happening. Here's my perspective on it. So when Max Baucus kills the public option, MSNBC is not going to tell you, hey, he killed it because he's getting millions of dollars from the healthcare companies. If you're serving the audience, that's the most important part of the story. The real reason he's doing it is he's getting paid millions of dollars to do it. So that's audience first, to put them above access or even advertisers, just to be honest with the audience. It isn't that hard. It isn't that complicated.
And that gets to money. That gets to how
Yep.
things are funded. How are you funded?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different ways that we're funded. Investors in the company, and those investors just care about a return, right? But what is important to us and what we insist upon is that they never have control over editorial. If you want to have control over editorial, you go invest in a different company. And I can assure you, Rob, that has cost us untold sums of money. Okay, if we wanted to play ball, boy, would we have had tens of millions of dollars in investment, because it's a great property. Here we are, we're uprooting all of television. It is incredibly valuable, right? But we won't compromise on editorial. Secondarily, there's a lot of things that we can't finance with investors or advertisers, so we just go to the audience. So unfortunately, journalism is not a profit center. That's why at MSNBC, there actually are almost no journalists. At the time when I was there, I asked to investigate a story, and they said, we don't have an investigative reporter in the building. There's only one. It's Michael Isikoff, and he mainly works for NBC News. If he has time, he'll get to the MSNBC shows. That's not an accident. They have billions of dollars. They can hire 1,000 investigative reporters. One, they don't want to rock the boat. Two, it's expensive and doesn't get great ratings, okay? So what we think is the audience wants that investigative reporting because they want to challenge the establishment. They want to challenge Trump, Republican Party, Democratic Party, et cetera, right? So we asked the audience for it. So far, they have been incredibly generous, and we've raised over $1.6 million. And what we show the audience is, you give us this, and we give you that, right? And we've proved it for over a decade now. So originally, we asked for money for a studio. We raised $425,000, and then we built a studio, and they saw it with their own eyes. And they're like, okay, there it is. That's where the money went, right? And now they can exist, and they have a studio to shoot out of. For the reporters, I said I'd hire X amount by if you at $500,000, and we did, at $1 million, and we did, and at $1.5 million, and we did. We've hired 10 people already, and they've broken stories like Donna Brazil leaking questions to Hillary Clinton, Standing Rock, the DNC race, and how it was rigged by not the race itself, but the structure of the DNC is rigged by not just the establishment, but by lobbyists and consultants that actually make millions of dollars off of donations that regular Americans send in. And so when they see that, they go, okay, proof's in the pudding. I gave money and they did this great investigative reporting. I like it. I'm going to give more.
So is this only something they can do by watching, or do you have a print version of what you do like CNN does?
Yeah, so first let me just say that.
Yeah, walk us through the ways to take advantage of and access all of your resources.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. So first off, on that journalism drive, there's less than 2 weeks left now, because we said we're going to do it for the first 100 days of Trump. And if you want to participate in that, tytnetwork.com/go, that's how you do that. tytnetwork.com is where you can get all the programming. You can get the live show. We're live 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern every single day. And every once in a while, someone who used to watch me on MSNBC or Current finds it, and they're like, oh my God, it's just like a TV show, but online. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Not that complicated. And then if you say, hey, I don't want to watch the whole 2-hour show, or I don't want to watch live, you can go get clips by topic on either YouTube or Facebook. And again, youtube.com/TheYoungTurks, facebook.com/TheYoungTurks. Or if you say, hey, listen, I just want it whenever I want it ad-free, I want all the network shows, then you become a member and you help support independent media. That's $10 a month, and that's tytnetwork.com/join.
Okay. Is there any print version at all?
Oh, sorry, on the print version, we just started that because of the journalism drive. So we were able to then have enough resources to also hire a managing editor, which then allowed us to start a print version. So that's medium.com/TheYoungTurks. And so now writing some articles, some columns, also sharing some columns from, for example, last couple of days, national directors of Wolf-Pac have put up a couple of articles about how to get money out of politics. So that is about a month old, and already it's going great.
Now, let's talk about Wolf-Pac and Justice Democrats. Those are two major projects that you're involved with. Tell about your involvement and what they do.
Sure. So Wolf-Pac is a super PAC to get money out of politics. Now, we think legislation can be overturned by the Supreme Court, and this Congress doesn't seem like it's going to do anything to get money out of politics anyway. So we think an amendment is the only course. And if you're going to do an amendment, there's only two ways to propose an amendment. One is 2/3 of Congress. This incredibly corrupt Congress is not going to do that. Cancer doesn't cure cancer. Luckily, the founding fathers were geniuses. They put a second path in. They knew Washington would get too corrupt at some point. So the second path is 2/3 of the states call for a convention to propose an amendment. That's what we're pursuing right now. We've already gotten 5 states to say yes, including California, largest state in the union. And we're busy working on that today and every day. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are fighting us. The establishment, both on the right and the left, hate it. They hate it with a burning hot passion. The call I had right before this interview was with some establishment so-called progressive group in Washington. And they say, no, convention will lead to change. And I say, yes, exactly. That's exactly what we want. But they don't realize it. Again, they're good people, but they're elitists, and they don't trust the people. And the status quo has been pretty good to them. So they don't really want to change it. We do at Wolf-Pac. We've got to get money out of politics. If you don't get money out, I've been saying this for close to 10 years now. Before, people were like, oh, it's my 3rd priority. It's my 7th priority. I think we've won that issue now. Yes, everybody gets it. If you don't get it out, they're just going to keep getting bribes and doing whatever they got bribed to do. Okay, what is Justice Democrats? Justice Democrats is the strong progressive wing of the Democratic Party. We just launched that a couple of months ago because we're tired of the establishment Democrats with their wall-to-wall losses. Their record of failure is historic. It's legendary. Just real quick breakdown for you. They lost to the White House to the most unpopular person who has ever run for president. I can stop right there and go, that's it. We're done with them. Well, who would ever entrust them to run another campaign, right? But not only did they lose the White House, they lost the Supreme Court. Not just because they lost the White House, but for a year they didn't fight for their nominee. They're the worst. Then they lost the House. They lost the Senate, a Senate that they easily could have won in the last election. They lost anyway because they're a bunch of losers. They're proven epic losers. And then that's not even the worst part. They've lost 1,000 seats at the state level. They've lost 69 out of 99 of the state legislatures. And then when we say, hey, step aside and let progressives run campaigns, they go, how dare you? How can you possibly not unify behind the wise people in the establishment wing of the Democratic Party? Are you kidding me? You guys are historic losers. It would be negligence. It would be malpractice to unify behind your losing strategy. Step aside, let strong progressives run. Now, of course, they're not going to do that, so we're going to make them do that. Go to justicedemocrats.com, sign up today. We already have nearly 250,000 people who've signed up to the party in about 2 months. This thing is on fire, okay? By the way, Wolf-Pac is wolf-pac.com. Wolf-Pac's nonpartisan because you need 3/4 of the country to agree. There's only one thing that 3/4 of the country agrees on, including Republicans. Money is corrupting politics. It is obvious legalized bribery. Get it out. We hate the swamp. We hate the corruption. We hate crony capitalism. Let's all get it out together. wolf-pac.com.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about Justice Democrats. I want to hear more about it. How are you going to take things away from the DNC and
by force.
There you
go. So people keep asking me, the reporters in Washington, are you guys going to run someone against Joe Manchin? And what I keep telling them is, you're not getting it. Of course we are. But Joe Manchin is a symptom of the larger problem. We're going to primary the overwhelming majority of the Democrats. We're not going to primary one person or 6 people. We're going to primary dozens, maybe hundreds of them, because they're all part of the same problem. They take corporate money, they take PAC money, and then they do as they are told.
And they obey the DNC. You know, if you're going to run and the DNC and you agree to get the DNC's help, you basically have to sign away your soul. Yeah. So that's the DNC is the disease.
So that freaks them out, and they say, "How dare you, you upstarts!" And then they write, snide articles. And you should have seen the article from NBC News. They're like, "Well, the Justice Democrats have never won a race. We've never run a race. We're just 2 months old." If you write that, you're basically saying, "I hate these guys. I work for the establishment, and I'm going to make up a super obvious, misleading statement here to try to convince you that they." But how about the races that the establishment Democrats ran and lost? But they don't write that in the article because that's their buddies, right? So I can go on and on about that. But the point is, we're not going to listen to them. I don't give a damn what some mainstream media reporter thinks. I don't care what the DNC thinks. I don't care what the Democratic Party officials and establishments and lobbyists, consultants think. They're the problem. So we're going to solve the problem by primarying them. And we're going to do it systematically. We already have had thousands of nominees. Okay, what we look for is real people. Okay, we're not looking for politicians. Some folks have run for a race or two before. That's okay as long as they're true progressives. And we have only one. They say, "Oh, you guys have a litmus test." Yeah, we have one litmus test. You're not allowed to take corporate or PAC money. If you do, well, then you've conceded that you are willing to be systematically, legally bribed. We don't agree. We hate the system of bribery. We think it leads to no good results. So we're not going to take money, and we're going to, from those sources, we're going to take small donor money. And they say, "Oh, you'll never raise enough money." We already raised over $1 million. By the end of this process, we're going to raise so much money. We're going to have so many candidates. It's going to shock them. And then when we put dozens of Justice Democrats in Congress, then we're going to be having a completely different conversation. Because, Rob, not only does that get you power, and actually you fight for policy positions, not just politics. The point of this is supposed to be policy. Not just so you can accrue power, but so that you can use that power for real change that helps the American people. Not only do you get those guys in, but you scare the bejesus out of the rest of them.
Where does Bernie Sanders come in on this?
So Bernie, everybody's got a slightly different path, but we're all on the same overall road with the same destination, okay? So Bernie obviously started Our Revolution. It's a wonderful group. And if you want to support them, by all means do that, okay? Now, the reason we started Just Democrats, a little different than Our Revolution, is that Our Revolution is, so far, has seemed unlikely to primary Democrats on this scale, okay? If they want to, great. I love you, brothers and sisters. So let's do it together, right? So we're trying to help them. So if we're pushing them from the left, great, right? So that's my take on it. But they do wonderful work.
Okay. An important election that's coming up. There are three, really. There's Ossoff, there's the Montana election, and then the one to replace Jeff Sessions in Alabama. If anybody on the horizon for Alabama?
Yeah. So great question. So we looked very hard at those congressional races, not the Senate race as much. And we want the candidate to be a Justice Democrat. So, for example, what Our Revolution does is they endorse candidates that they think have the right positions. Great. That's a wonderful position to have, right? Hence, Quist in Montana is a good, solid progressive. I hope to God that he wins, and I like that Our Revolution endorsed them. What we're saying is, no, you've got to run as a Justice Democrat. You've got to say no PAC money, no corporate money, and let's run as strong progressives with no apologies. So, they tiptoe around Republican. They tiptoe around, oh my God, it's a red state. No. In red states, they hate big business too. I know. I see the polling. I'm not doing it for my gut. I'm not doing it based on my opinion. I see the polling. The polling says they hate big business. They don't kind of dislike it. They hate it, right? Run against big business, but Democrats won't. And Democratic consultants. Once the consultants come in, it's good night, Irene. Because, a couple of these guys could win because there's such a big wave out there, a populist progressive wave, God bless. It's fantastic. But consultants are usually counterproductive. because they say, oh, spend money on TV because I get paid more on TV. Oh, knocking on doors, what's my take on that? I don't get commission on that. Don't bother knocking on doors. No, knocking on doors is actually the most effective strategy, and I can show you why through empirical data that we have, right? So if a candidate signs on to be a Just Democrat, we're going to run a super strong race and help them win. But with these candidates, we weren't ready in time to be able to get that kind of commitment from them.
So you mentioned polling and data. Are you having your own polling done at all?
Not yet, but we probably will when we get into the heart of these races. So the polling that is publicly available is super clear. So, I don't need to replicate that. Look, we take small donors. So I can't afford to waste $1 of your money. So a lot of that polling done by the DNC goes to their buddies in Washington who get giant contracts to do that polling. Sometimes polling is necessary, and so so we will do some, but only if we really need it and we think it's a good expenditure of resources, not because our friends in Washington have giant polling companies. So when you already look at the ones that are free, that are available, the answer is clear, right? So what are the 3 most unpopular things in America right now? Politicians, mainstream media, and big business. Yet the Democratic establishment doesn't run against any of them. Again, malpractice. We're going to fix that malpractice. We're going to run against all 3 of those because none of those guys are our donors. So small donors are our donors. You're our donors. So justicedemocrats.com. Let's go get them.
So if you're not going to use consultants, who's going to run the campaigns, and how is a Justice Democrats campaign going to be different in terms of the management of it and the implementation of it?
So we're not going to use the same Washington consultants the Democratic Party uses, but obviously you need campaign managers. So we're very pragmatic. And look, if through the thousands of submissions that we've had, I think we've had around 2,500 submissions so far, only 70 people have made it through the vetting process so far, have gone through 4 rounds of vetting. So we're not playing. I mean, it's like, look, and sometimes that's tough because good intentioned people that are wonderful progressives will want to run or will get nominated by their friends and family, and we won't pick them. So we have to be pragmatic because we cannot waste any of your money. We've got to get results. We've got to put these people in Congress, okay? So we need to have good, effective campaign managers, and we will. Part of the reason that we're building up Justice Democrats is in voting, unfortunately, a lot of voting is predicated on branding. So why did Hillary Clinton wind up beating Bernie Sanders? Well, she had a monumental branding advantage. The Clinton name had been out there for 30 years. Bernie Sanders closed a 60-point lead, which is historic and unbelievable. And at the end, the mainstream media snickered and said, well, you still didn't beat her. Yeah, I mean, look at the gigantic advantage she began with. Right? It would have taken several miracles to beat her. So the reason I bring that up is the brand is Justice Democrats. If you run as a Justice Democrat, then people in the country will know, I get it, that guy doesn't take bribes. That guy is clean. That guy is an actual citizen. He was nominated by the community as a leader of that community. He went through this vetting process, and he has clean campaign managers. I think that'll make all the difference.
I think it's a big deal, and I'm glad to hear you're doing it. Thank you so much. Let's talk about some issues. What are the issues that you're paying attention to right now? Like last night, John Ossoff had an election. Talk about framing. How are you framing that?
Yeah. So I think what's happening there is wonderful. I think that there is a progressive wave that is going to be a tsunami. And the establishment to this day closes their eyes to it. And they say, oh, no, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, these populist uprisings were a flash in the pan. No, it's the American people in unison shouting, we can't stand the establishment. Oh, there's a 30-year-old progressive? Good. In the middle of Georgia? Good, we'll take him. Right away. Let's go. He nearly got 50% in Newt Gingrich's district. That's amazing. In Tom Price, a deeply corrupt super right-wing Republican who won in landslides in just the last election. And all of a sudden, a Democrat nearly won it outright, got, around 49% of the vote. That is, if that doesn't tell you that populism works, that progressive works, that change works, then you don't want to hear that message. It's because it's super clear and obvious.
So now it makes me think again about Kansas and what happened there. I mean, the Democrats totally blew that. They just threw it away. If Daley Cause hadn't jumped in, there was nothing. How do you take it away from the DNC? I mean, it's about attraction, I would imagine, but how do you take the power so that it's just as Democrats who make these decisions instead of the DNC?
So we're going to do it through the people. And it's, again, not just happy talk that you hear from other groups. It's practical. So, yes, what they did in Kansas was unconscionable. It's such a typical loser Democratic establishment mentality. Oh, my God, if we get into the race, so will the Republicans. Because their assumption is a Republican will always beat a Democrat. So we might as well preemptively surrender. It's so maddening. Okay, so our position is we're not afraid of Republicans. Republicans should be afraid of us. So when we go to run a race, we're going to ask the people. Look, Daily Cause, what they raised $2 million for that race in Kansas. Wait till they get a load of us. We've got, you want to talk about unique viewers? I told you we have about 250 million views a month. We have about 70 to 80 million unique viewers every month. That's why we raised $1 million right out of the gate for Just Democrats. We can go raise and say, here's a specific candidate. Here's why we think he's going to win. Let's go make that happen.
Have you done that yet?
Just like we do with the Young Turks and in media. Proof is in the pudding. Let me show you what we're going to do. Then we do it. And then you go, oh, okay, I got it. I'm in. And the more we show success, the bigger we'll get.
Have you done that kind of candidate fundraising yet?
No, we're about to announce new candidates literally any day now. So over the next 10 days or so, I think that Just Democrats are set to announce 5 candidates.
I sure hope you come up with something in Alabama. That would be sweet. That's a tough one, though.
I hear you, brother. Let me get back to you on that one.
You know who, off the top of my head, I thought about? Don Siegelman. He's on probation now.
Yeah.
He won the governorship there, and boy, he could be an amazing one. No?
What they did to Don Siegelman was literally a crime. And even back then, in the middle of them doing it, Young Turks has been around now over 15 years. So we were on the air when that was happening. We had free Don Siegelman T-shirts that we had the audience. I mean, our audience cares so much. They're walking around in Alaska and Hawaii with free Don Siegelman T-shirts, right? So that's a super interesting idea, Rob. Let me look into it.
Yeah. Just last week, Neera Tanden, who is the current head of the Center for American Progress, which was founded by John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign manager, she and Howard Dean attacked Tulsi Gabbard.
Of course they did.
So what's your take on Center for American Progress?
Again, I might be more generous here than some other folks, but the result is the same. Look, I've known some of those folks, and I think that they mean well, but I think that they have lived in Washington so long that they can't see straight. They are so ensconced in their own bubble and their own perspective. They probably genuinely think they're doing the right thing, but what they're doing is disastrous. So they're supporting a pro-war position in Syria. I mean, you want to talk about the invisible hand of the establishment. How quick did the entirety of the media and almost the entirety of the Democratic Party turn and support Donald Trump once he began bombing Assad and threatening a wider war in the Middle East?
How did you handle it?
Amazing.
How did you handle it?
I'm going to try to be polite here and say our answer to war with Syria is hell no. Hell no. Now, first of all, I got to be honest with you, and I said it from day one in that story. I don't even believe it. And I don't say that because, again, as you can tell here, I'm not a wild-eyed guy, right? So I might get criticism for not going far enough progressive here. But you look at that situation. You're telling me Assad, on the precipice of victory, where he's got Russia on his side and Trump has promised to pull America out from fighting him, and he's got all the rebels on the run, is going to do a chemical attack and turn the whole world against them and risk bringing America into the war? Why? Why would he do that? That makes no sense at all. Nope. And then I just read this morning a report from a weapons expert saying, no, the report that Trump put out claiming that proving that it was the Syrian government, there's no such thing. In fact, it probably does the opposite. It shows you that it was likely not dropped in the way that the Trump administration claims that it was. So it's very hard to suss out what the game that is being played is, and I have several theories on it, but that would take too long. But let me just say that obviously we're not on board for war in Syria. We think that would be disastrous, but it's all equally obvious that the establishment, I don't know if it's the defense contractors that are pushing it. Certainly, that's a huge part of it. The oil companies, et cetera. Instability in the Middle East increases oil prices. Financial speculators, the list goes on and on. But big money is interested in that war. And so the Democratic Party will fight people like Tulsi Gabbard that say no. Center for American Progress will fight them. The media will fight them because they are the establishment.
Are there any nonprofit think tanks or advocacy organizations on the left that you like?
Yes. So they asked for unity. Well, we got great unity. Just Democrats already unified with brand new Congress. That was another group that was fighting a similar cause. Boom. We immediately did unity. Young Turks agrees. Wolf-Pac agrees. Our Revolution is a great group, right? But what do all these groups have in common? They're all relatively new. You look at all the progressive entrenched groups in DC, they've been around for 50 years, and their board members are well-heeled, well-to-do, and are not in favor of a lot of change. They want tiny amount of change. They're not bad people. They're good people who think we should be nice to blacks and gays should have the same rights. Fantastic. I love it. I agree. But anything else, they're going to fight you. And they are.
All right. You offered me 40 minutes. We've gone a little bit over that. What do you want to wrap up with anything to say?
Sure. Look, I super cliched, but it's true. And that's why Gandhi said it. Be the change you want to see in the world. So whether it's joining justdemocrats.com or wolf-pac.com or tytnetwork.com, it doesn't matter. Or Our Revolution or any group that you believe in. So don't make the resistance just about Trump. It's about Trump and the establishment. The establishment wants to trick you into thinking it's just about Trump and that if we get rid of Trump, that all of our problems would be solved. No, we had all these problems before Trump, okay? And secondarily, hey, look, social media is great. I love social media. I live in social media. But get out there in the real world too, okay? Do social media, watch, engage, participate, do protests, and then actually go beyond that. Get involved, run as a candidate, nominate someone as a candidate, get involved in a legislative fight, okay? Roll up your sleeves. And there's another cliched quote, but a very, very true. You know the quote about how a small group of dedicated people can change the world. In fact, they're the only people here. Margaret Mead, right? And it's absolutely true. Once the women's rights movement got in the streets, I mean, think about how impossible that was. How could you get the right to vote for women when they don't have the right to vote in the first place? It's impossible. They did the impossible once they started protesting in the streets and got more active. They did it in 7 years. That's it.
You know, there's one other thing about the women's right to vote that I think is really powerful. And that is that at one point, one of the leaders of the suffragettes was in prison and they were force feeding her with a tube. And one of the guards handed her a piece of paper and a pencil and gave her a chance to send a note out, which they got to the president. And that note changed everything. It moved the president. It was one person, a guard, giving somebody a piece of paper and pencil. That's a really small act. So what I take from that is you, whoever you are listening to this, you could be the person that makes that small act that changes everything. Howard Zinn has said it. Woody Guthrie has said it. Small acts can change the world.
That's right. And one more thing that I take away from it is Woodrow Wilson didn't give us he didn't give women the right to vote. Okay, it was activists. Activism is derided by the mainstream media. You know why? Because it's actually the most effective tool of change. It was activists. It was suffragettes who got us the right for women to vote. It was Martin Luther King who moved politicians so that Black people could have civil rights. It's always the activists that make the difference. That means don't wait for a knight in shining armor. You get up on that horse and you do it.
Another really short story. Dan Elvisberg tells about how he did what he did because he went to a talk, an anti-war talk. And there was a guy who was a protester who was arrested who was going to go to jail the next day. So I don't remember his name. It's not even important. But the fact is, you doing a protest may inspire somebody who could just flip the right lever and change the world. And so you can't imagine how powerful you as an individual are. It could be you who inspires someone else and sets off that domino to change everything.
Look, it's in my personal life. I mean, I can give you a lot of examples, but I'll leave you on this. Chelsea Manning was following two people on Twitter before she did what she did. Glenn Greenwald and the Young Turks. So you never know. You send a message in a bottle, you never know who receives it and the change they can make.
Thanks so much, Czenk. Any thoughts about op-ed news?
God bless, man. Op-ed news gave me a break early on. You guys published my articles when there wasn't nearly as much interest as there is today. And I want to thank you for it. And look at that. You know, you sent a message in a bottle and you made a difference. And I really, really appreciate that. And I think that it helped us to get to where we are. So, you know, couldn't encourage people more to check out op-ed news.
All right. Thanks a lot. Much appreciated.